Well, hey guys, today we're going to look at the scientific method, and our objective for our lesson for this video is to be able to understand the main parts of the scientific method. So, let's take a look. Part one, what we want to talk about is, first of all, what is a controlled experiment? Now, a controlled experiment is a scientific investigation that only one independent variable, and all other variables remain constant. So if we have multiple variables, this is not what we're going to be looking at. We just are changing one variable, and that variable is called the independent variable. So for example here, if we have an example, we are trying, this is the example of the scientific inquiry. You're trying to determine what type of food, fish food, makes goldfish live the longest. Now, if we have some goldfish here in class, what should be the only variable that we're going to be changing among the fish? If we were going to be doing this experiment, we might end up changing the food, right? So if we're going to do this, we're going to be changing the food. The rest of the variables that are going to be staying the same is going to be maybe like, water temperature. That's really important. We don't want the fish to die because the water's too hot or too cold. Water temp. What about size of the tank, right? Maybe size of tank. We don't want to have that. Maybe, we don't want to have too small of a tank or too large of a tank. Also, what about the pH of the water? So, we want the most ideal conditions of for the goldfish. And there's probably some other variables we can talk about, but I think you get the idea that we are only giving for this simple experiment, we are looking only at the type of food, and then the rest of the stuff is going to be just the rest of the variables are going to have to stay constant. All right, so going on here. So if we were going to examples of a poorly written scientific inquiry, if we were looking at ones that are really we wouldn't want to write, and also we're going to describe what's wrong with them. So first one I'm going to give is, will giving a plant extra water make it better? All right, this is something that I think in 7th grade, 6th grade, we probably would give this as a scientific inquiry. Plants are really easy to get, and if I feed it extra water, will it make it better? Well, first of all, make it better. What does it mean to make it better? Is it to make it taller? Does it make it healthier looking? Make the leaves greener? Okay, what does it mean to make it better? So we need to make it a lot more specific. So the variable we want to make, maybe we would discuss like our independent variable being so the independent variable, I remember, is what we change within this. So it's what's going to change, what we're going to measure. Maybe that's gonna make it better is height. Okay. So make sure that it's a measurement. Better is not measurable. So if I give it water, how much? And so I'm sorry. Take that back here. So that's going to be our dependent variable. And see, this is kind of funny. So our independent variable is actually going to be our independent variable. See, this is what happens. So you gotta think through it. Independent variable is going to be our height to make it better. Okay, so this is our height, and our dependent variable is going to be the height, and our independent variable is going to be our water. So how much water are we giving the plant to make it bigger, or make it taller? And make sure that we have a unit too, so maybe in centimeters, and the water, we're going to measure in milliliters. Okay, so everything needs to be in the metric system. Next one. Oh, I need to end up erasing that. Okay, so looking at our next one here. Oh, I give you an example. If a plant has more than 10 milliliters of water per day, will it grow to be higher in height? Awesome. Okay, so let me go to the next one here. Number 2, will drinking Red Bull make me smarter? What does smarter mean? Does it mean that your brain grows larger? Does it mean that you can do, you can write a conclusion for your science class? What does that mean? So we need to make sure that we use a unit and a variable that is going to be correct. And so this could be a good example. If a person drinks a can of Red Bull a day, so we get a specific independent variable that we're changing, so we're drinking one. It could be 2 cans of Red Bull a day. It could be 3 cans of Red Bull a day. Will they receive more correct answers on their math assessment? So we have a measurable. We're measuring the math assessment, how many questions you get right on there, and we're also using an independent variable to determine if that's the case. So looking at number 3, will exercising every day make me healthier? Now, again, what does healthier mean? Does it mean that you do more push-ups? Does it mean that you can run farther? Does that mean that you lost weight, or that your BMI, which is your body mass index, is within range? What does healthier mean? So this gives you another example of writing a good scientific inquiry hypothesis. If a person runs at least 1 mile a day, will their bad cholesterol be lower? Yeah. Any questions on that? Hopefully just give me a shout or talk to me in class. Now, one more thing I do want to point out before we move on is that you write an hypothesis with an if and a then or will statement, So you think about it in regards to, if this variable, if I change this variable, if this variable changes, then or will this variable change? So it kind of gives us a good example. So remember, problems must be measurable. All hypotheses need to be in if-then format, and I just mentioned that. So here's our steps. Moving on, here's our steps of the scientific method here. So problem is our first step, always stated in the form of a question with a question mark. It must always be testable. So remember that with the problem there. So background research, statements describing what you already know about the problem. So this is where you're going to do all your research part. You're going to end up using, I might give you some information for this. You might have to do a little bit of research yourself, but it should be written in complete sentences. Your hypothesis, if-then statement must be measurable. Educated guess to your problem. Any questions about that? I will be happy to help you with that. So, in addition to your hypothesis section, you must also list the following. You have to add your independent variable, what was changed by you as the scientist, your dependent variable, what is being measured by you, the scientist. So you change the independent variable. The dependent variable depends on the independent. And your control factors, your constants. So list 3 factors that need to remain constant for your test. Your procedure. These are the numerical steps, step-by-step description of how you perform the lab. Steps must be clear and easy to follow. Not just I watered the plants, but water plants twice a day with 10 milliliters of room temperature tap water at the base of the plant. Now, I use that there is temperature and where I watered. So it needs to be a little bit more detailed. Number 3, should be written so that it can be followed by someone else. Your data table. Now, I have a video on how to use Google Sheets to make a data table. And I also have a video on how to use Notability to make a graph too if you don't have access to Google Sheets. So both of those are available right here on Spark, so take a look at those. But also, your data should be recorded into a data table or chart as well. Data tables must be well labeled and include units. And I give you an example of what we need to have in a graph as well with another PowerPoint. But this is a picture of your data in the graph of a form of graph. All rules for graphing must be followed. You must have a title. You must have X and Y labeled, including units. It needs to be spread out. Your y-axis labeled, including, you must have units. Ruler used, pencil and colored if necessary. Now, this is also used, like I said, I have a Notability video, and then I also have a Google Sheets video, and I also have one that is all about graphing, so take a look at those if you're confused at all with that. Finally, your conclusion. All conclusions must include an explanation describing what your data showed. This must be about a paragraph or so in length, maybe a page in length, depending on the conclusion that we're going to be looking at. And did you accept or reject your hypothesis? So we're always looking at that hypothesis and writing it in an argument fashion. A few takeaways. Last part of this this video here. Number one, look back at this PowerPoint to remind yourself about what scientific investigation entails. Number two, make sure that you understand the parts of a scientific investigation so that you will be able to complete a lab effectively. Can't wait to see what we get going. So that's all we got for this video, and can't wait to see our labs. Talk to you later, guys.